Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today it is finally time for us to review Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate on the Switch. This review was originally written by the venerable Mitch Vogel and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. Everything changed for Capcom's Monster Hunter series in January 2018, which saw the successful release of Monster Hunter World on the PlayStation 4. Not only did the series change platforms from Nintendo's family to that of Sony's, a reversal of the situation that took place only a few years beforehand when it jumped ship from the PS2 and PSP to Nintendo's hardware, but it also represented a significant departure from its underlying design, streamlining much of it and lowering the difficulty considerably to appeal to a wider audience. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, an upgraded re-release of the 2015 3DS title, is a bit of an odd duck then, feeling like a step back in many ways despite releasing after World. Even so, it represents the very best of what the old games had to offer. A strong case could be made for this being the best game in the series to date. Let's get the changes out of the way first and dig down into why that Ultimate was added to the title. Obviously, there's the upgraded graphics and control scheme, but we'll get more onto those later. But Capcom has opted to add in a handful of other features as well. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate features a grand total of 93 monsters to fight, which is 20 more than were featured in the original generations, and is the most featured in any standalone Monster Hunter game yet. Some of these monsters are new, some are returning from previous games, and some are fascinating variations on existing monsters, but any which way you cut it, there's a lot of monsters to fight. On top of this, there's a whole new tier of endgame quests called G Rank, which pits you against crazy difficult enemies with higher health and more attacks, but also allows you to craft whole new armor sets designed with this late gameplay in mind. In addition to this, there's also two new hunter styles, Valor and Alchemy, and a new Palico class called Beast, a new hunter art for each weapon class, and a new mechanic called Style Power Up, or SP. SP is a chargeable mode that can be attached to a hunter art, allowing you to bolster its effects in battle, such as letting characters use items faster or reducing the stamina drain of certain actions. Considering all the extra content that's thrown in, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate certainly earns that extra adjective, although those that have already put in hundreds of hours into the original game may want to take a moment to think before jumping straight in, because this is not a brand new game. If you do deem it worth that full price tag, bear in mind that your save data from the 3DS version can be imported, and that's the 3DS version of Generations, not Generations Ultimate, because that wasn't released outside of Japan. And obviously this allows you to tackle the endgame content right away, if you've got to the end. As for the base game, it's mostly the same as the 2015 release, which is not a bad thing by any stretch. The core gameplay loop is simple, yet addictive, centered around fighting monsters, carving them up from materials, making weapons and armor out of those materials, and repeating the cycle again with a more powerful beast. This is a game that was designed as a homage to everything that preceded the series, meaning the longtime Monster Hunter fans will no doubt be pleased to see the return of locales, characters, and monsters from across the series' history. Fans of Monster Hunter World will be disappointed to see that many of the quality of life changes that the game introduced are nowhere to be found, but there's a certain charm of the put up or shut up philosophy that the game executes so well, and it's important to remember that this game saw its original release before World came out. Your adventure starts in the new village of Burna and makes next to no effort at implementing any kind of story in the gameplay. Some may decry this decision and see it as something as a setback, but it feels like the right decision in light of what's being offered. Monster Hunter has never been a series focused on deep plot lines, as these would only stand to get in the way of the grind-heavy gameplay systems. That being said, many individual characters still have a certain goofy quality, which makes the cameo appearances of figures like the Caravaneer from Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate a welcome sight, a bit like seeing an old friend. After a hasty introduction by the Burna village elder, you'll be allowed to pick from a list of quests at your own pace, broken up into different star ranks by difficulty, with objectives ranging from defeating certain beasts to collecting certain items from the field. This game fortunately cuts back considerably on the tedium tediousness of early game tutorials that plagued past entries in the series, limiting these to their own tab in the quest board, although collection and gathering quests still rear their heads rather frequently. Though we can see how these have their place in the game's progression, they teach you lots about what items can be found and where, these quests certainly represent the most boring portions of the game, eschewing high-intensity hunting action with collecting mushrooms and flowers from obscure corners of the map, and they pop up a little more often than it feels they should. The real stars of the show are the dozens of saurian and draconic beasts that you'll be tussling with, and fortunately these make up a bulk of the quests that you'll take on. The designs range from the outright terrifying, like the, and I'm probably going to mispronounce these, the Nakarkos and the Manifesto, to the more goofy and silly like the strange rabbit bear Lagombi, and every one of them is memorable in their own way. Not only does each beast look distinct, but lots of care has been put into the way that they move and strike, with many of the movements being based on real predatory animals studied by developers. It's striking how much detail goes into most of these monsters. Many of them feel like they could truly exist in some distant corner of the earth, and that goes a long way towards making each fight that much more engaging. Though it may not seem so in-depth on the surface, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate is very much a game of strategy. Charging into battle with little planning or preparation beforehand will usually result in your character getting thoroughly mauled by the supposed prey and carted back to the base. The items and armor sets you prepare in advance can mean the difference between life and death, and knowing various animations is tantamount to success, given that there's a slight delay to just about every action that can be made. Want to heal yourself mid-battle with a potion? Better get to a safe spot, as your character is a sitting duck whilst taking a long drink from their flask. Want to know the best time to strike that lightning-fast monster? Study its movements and learn the tells that signal its various attacks. It is an uncompromising game, but that's not to say it's an unfair one, it simply demands all of your attention. The tools you choose to fight each monster with are a critical component to success as well, with there being 14 different kinds of weapons, each with their own movesets, strengths, and weaknesses. For a larger, hard-shelled monster with a high defense, it may be wise to take a hammer that doles out slow, heavy damage, whilst a quicker and smaller beast might justify the sword and shield or the bowgun. Each weapon class feels distinct and useful in its own way, and the diverse lineup of monsters encourages experimentation and adaptability. This is all supplemented then by the equally diverse lineup of armor sets that can also be crafted out of monster parts. Aside from the obvious defense buffs they grant, each piece in an armor set contains a number of skill points that, under the right circumstances, can grant the hunter passive buffs which will change performance. One armor set may offer high max health and quicker weapon sharpening, whilst another grants fire resistance and slower stamina drain. Like with weapons, there's an armor set that matches every playstyle, and most of them look pretty cool as well. Crafting armor and weapon sets will make up a bulk of your experience with Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, meaning that there's lots of grinding to get enough materials, but there's something immensely motivating about always having something just beyond your reach that'll improve your character in some way. Monster Hunter is excellent into coaxing you into just one more fight. Two of the main gameplay changes in Generations Ultimate are the Hunter Styles and Hunter Arts mechanics, which further allow players to tweak the game to their liking. Hunter Styles are a way of changing up the way your hunter moves, such as how Aerial makes it easier to mount monsters, or how Adept gives you a powerful counterattack if you dodge an incoming attack at the last minute. Certain weapon types feel geared more towards certain styles, but it's still fun to mix and match and see what combinations work best. Hunter Arts are a part of styles as well, acting as passive chargeable special moves that can make a surprisingly huge difference in the outcome of a fight. They range from defensive things like a dodge that will make your hunter completely invincible for a few critical seconds, to offensive options like a powered-up sword slash. Knowing when to best drop these moves in a fight can make things a whole lot easier, and depending on which style you have equipped, you can have up to 3 arts equipped at once. Another defining feature is the Prowler mode, which acts as a fun side mode that lets you play as one of your feline palico companions. When playing as a Prowler, you can't use any items, but there are a series of equipable skills you can use in their place, and you also have the benefit of infinite stamina that will no doubt come as a huge relief to some people. Though not every quest is Prowler mode friendly, it can be extremely fun to fool around as a weird cat for a while, and the Palico's infinite stamina supply makes it ideal for knocking out the tedious gathering quests that you need to complete before the next rank of quests unlocks. This mode also serves as a neat entry point into the series for new players, as it strips back some of the more complex mechanics for a more forgiving and straightforward playstyle, and can also be an invaluable support choice when hunting in a group. It's not a significant feature, but it's a cool one nonetheless, and can make for a cool twist on the otherwise routine quest. Though Monster Hunter games are already incredibly time-consuming in single-player mode, there's also a whole multiplayer aspect that features prominently and is arguably even acting as the main draw. An entirely separate quest board and ranking system exists for the multiplayer component, potentially allowing for limitless hours of replayability. Monsters fought in multiplayer are generally much tougher to take down, but having up to 3 other people wailing away with weapons of their own more than makes up for this, and you get a much greater sense of satisfaction beating a monster as a team rather than just alone. Though you can play locally with other friends with Switch units, there's also the online multiplayer which works quite well. In our pre-release sessions online, setting up a party with friends was a relatively painless process, and we only encountered a few brief instances where the connection chugged. The omission of voice chat is a little bit disappointing, but it's not hard to use a third-party app these days to get around the issue. On the presentation side of things, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate manages to satisfy, even if it doesn't necessarily dazzle. The game's roots on the 3DS are evident from the simple geometry, chunky models, and 30 frames per second cap, apparently introduced to maintain compatibility with the 3DS version, which was only released in Japan. Though the new HD textures and realistic shadows go a long way to minimizing this issue. What's perhaps more alluring is the new control scheme taking advantage of the extra buttons and second stick for an experience that's much less cramped and much more comfortable. Capcom did an admirable job of making this game control well for its 3DS release, but it feels so much more natural with the Switch's setup, and playing it on the go only further hammers this home. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate may lack the smoothness and accessibility that made Monster Hunter World such a smash hit, but it more than makes up for it by being a sort of greatest hits collection of the high points of the series, giving you hundreds of hours of content to play through. Couple this with the HD visuals, easy to use multiplayer, and ability to play the full experience on the go, and you've got a game that will easily appeal to both veterans and newcomers alike. It may not necessarily represent the future of the series, but Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate is an utterly fantastic experience in its own right, and a worthy follow-up to the 3DS original, and one that no Switch owner will want to be without. Personal rambly feelings time, and yeah, I think overall, this is probably the best Monster Hunter game I've ever played. Admittedly, I haven't played World, so I can't compare it directly to that because I don't like turning my Xbox on, and overall, I just think it's really deserving of the title Ultimate, as we said in the review. And I'm still just floored by how many hours I've put into it, and how little I've actually done in the game, because I'm still in the low rank missions, and there's so much more to go, and it's so exciting. It's just so satisfying to play, and the addition of various things like the Prowler mode makes it so that it's not necessarily easy to get into, but it's definitely approachable. It's far better than things like Monster Hunter Tri and 3 Ultimate that were really not very accessible at all. So it's a really, really big improvement, and having it on the Switch is a massive, massive boon, because I just can't play the 3DS for any length of time these days. It's just too small. The Switch has spoiled me in that regard. I am a little bit disappointed with the visuals and the fact that it's 30 frames a second. I could, you know, sort of accept it if it was 60 frames a second, but it's 30 frames a second. But at the same time, I've been playing it for God knows how many hours now, and it just sort of melts away, and you just enjoy the game for what it is. It's brilliant. If anything, it's a really good highlight to show that graphics really aren't everything. In fact, they really aren't that important, because they are arguably fairly basic, but the game is still absolutely phenomenal, and I love it to pieces. And I tell you what, one of the best ways to play a Monster Hunter game right now is split Joy-Con on the sofa. It is so comfortable. I've spent so many evenings recently, and indeed weekends, well, one weekend because I haven't had it that long, just with split Joy-Con, and it's just so much more comfortable. The Pro Controller is great as well, and is absolutely going to be, for some people, the way to play it. But the split Joy-Con, wow, that is just so comfortable, and it makes hunting monsters an almost relaxing experience in some instances. But then again, I'm only fighting Lagombies and stuff like that at the moment. Lagombies? What else am I fighting? I can't remember. Hermitors. I'm fighting Hermitors as well. But as Mitch wrote in the review, honestly, this really is the ultimate Monster Hunter. It's almost like the swan song of how Monster Hunter used to be before World, because World is the future, but for all the classic fans and the people who really love the classic gameplay, this is the one. This is the swan song. This is everything about it that was great and everything about it that you love. And it's absolutely to die for, and you could play it forever. I know I could. Anyway, that's enough of my rambly thoughts. Let me know what you feel of the rambly thoughts, because it's just an idea I had to give a little bit more depth, perhaps make it a little bit less just sort of reading out a review of someone else's, just to give it a little bit more of an edge, a little bit more rambly, a little bit more interesting, perhaps. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments, because it's just an idea I had literally whilst recording. But yeah, thanks for watching.